Hello and welcome to Networking in 2020 and Beyond. I'm Peter Hornberger from the Abington Launchbox at Penn State Abington. I'm going to be joined today by Michael Wojcik from Wojcik Communications, and we're going to be talking about different opportunities that might be available during this time where traditional networking can be challenging or even impossible. So we're going to talk about what you can do, some ways to get started, and particularly how you can use the virtual environment and technology to maybe make this time an opportunity for you to develop and enhance your network. This workshop is part of Global Entrepreneurship Week at Penn State University, and this is a time where we celebrate different opportunities related to entrepreneurship, innovation, creativity, and also put into it this global perspective as well. As a reminder, we're delivering this as a video premiere on YouTube, which allows you to engage with us if you're here during the premiere time, which is November the 18th at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're watching this during that period, you can engage via the YouTube chat feature and ask questions of both Michael, myself, or anyone in the event, and make comments as we go. All right, Michael, so as we get started, I think a good way to kick this off is to, give networking some position, right? So why is networking such an important thing? Why are we taking time out of Global Entrepreneurship Week to talk about networking? And I guess we can just talk about, why does networking matter in 2020 or maybe even any time? Why is this important?
Well, when I got started, I used to always wonder why people when they're in their 40s and 50s were so easily to get in front of CEOs or people in the C-suite of companies. And it didn't really dawn on me. It had to do with the friends and the relationships they generated for the 15, 20 years that led up to that. That if they surrounded themselves with the right people when they got out of college or got out of high school, as you were growing, they were growing just the same. And it's the long game with networking. And when you do it the right way, it opens the doors for you. Maybe not today, when sometimes it's today, but over the course of time, those are the relationships that are going to get you to the spots, whether it's a job, get you in front for a meeting, whatever it may be. It gets easier and easier because you have a personal relationship versus trying to go in to meet these people cold.
So one of the reasons why we thought that this conversation about networking was important is that you mentioned networking is about personal relationships. And as our environments have changed, how we develop new relationships obviously is going to change along with that. So how do you take lessons from how you built personal relationships in the past and now bring that into 2020 and potentially beyond? But what are some lessons that maybe we could learn or take from kind of this virtual space that we're in now and apply so that people can still be actively building and developing networks?
So the in-person thing's pretty much out the window. We could do it over the summer where you can sit outside and do the socially distanced safe thing. But now as we're going inside and it's getting colder, the networking events are not going to be there, or even just meeting people for coffee. You're not going to want to sit out in the freezing cold. So what I've actually kind of fallen back to is my close group of friends, friends that, whether it was that have grown through work or through just regular friendships. And as we've been connecting with new people, each of us, we've passed them on to the next person. And it's been interesting to see that the new connections and people we've spoken to, we're all in the same boat. And everybody's kind of stuttering and looking for the next thing to do. So just say a friend of mine's an attorney and he's talking to a real estate broker, and that's their business and that's part of their network. But then my friend who's the attorney says, hey, you should talk to Mike. And we set up the meeting for myself and this guy. And you go from there. You kind of fall back to the people you know best. We're all having these conversations, but you're just looping in that extra person. And because a lot of things are different right now, a lot of us have a lot more time because we're not traveling. We don't have to travel by plane. We don't have to drive to the office. You have these extra little bits of time that people are open to it because you can hop on a 5-minute phone call. You don't have to drive an hour to go meet somebody. It's less of an irritation and less of a time commitment to do these extra phone calls that are one-off because you talk to one person. You can kind of build that chain. And we've done that just even with a group of 3 of my friends. We've been doing that pretty successful. And again, part of that is the network you already have built in. We're in different industries. We've all kind of progressed through our careers at this point. So we're having more important conversations as we're going, with people that, might not help us today, but they're really good to know down the road.
Since we are virtual and we have technology, if we frame this not necessarily as a restriction or a challenge, and we maybe look at how might there be an opportunity now, like you just talked about how it might even be just as easy as now having a 5-minute phone call or a quick jump on Zoom. It might make things maybe a bit more accessible to networks. So what are some of your thoughts on how the virtual network opportunity that's maybe not what we asked for, but we have right now. What if we frame this as an opportunity to really enhance and add energy to our networking process?
Yeah, I think if you do it the right way, it's definitely, people are open to it. Especially as a student, people are always willing to help. And I think what it comes down to is if you're using just say the LinkedIn platform, is how you phrase your introduction or your request. If you're asking for help for somebody in your industry and you kind of lay out bullet points of what you're looking for and why you're asking for help, a lot of people are willing to help. The younger you are, the more successful people that are good people want to see you advance, because everybody went through the same thing. And most of the time people are, when they get somebody that's being proactive and showing the initiative to do these things, it kind of makes you look back to the story of when you started and all the things that you did incorrectly and all the things you wish you had help with. And people want to be able to provide that information. That's part of the reason I do this stuff, is you look to help people that if you have 1% of the experience perspective you have now, almost 20 years out of school, the amount of time and money and energy and stress you would have eliminated by just knowing little things. So I think it really comes down to how you ask. And as good as the technology is, adding a personal touch. So right now, everybody's using email. The amount of emails I get a day, it's absurd. Not even related to work, but everybody reaching out for something.
Yeah.
A handwritten note does a world of difference. I do that with big clients. I do it networking. Smil Impact Day, the last year, I guess fall of 19. I was sitting next to a guy named Jason. We were in a meeting with the dean for the school, and we talked for 2 seconds. Really nice guy. I've seen him at a couple of these impact days. Didn't really have a chance to introduce ourselves formally, just, quick chat. Knew who he was, wrote him a quick handwritten note. Said, hey, would love to reach out, maybe find out, grab coffee or something, again, pre-COVID. He shot me an email immediately saying, hey, I haven't gotten a handwritten note in forever. Definitely let's get together. So I really think it's the combination. It's one, LinkedIn's an awesome platform. How you phrase it's number two, but if you can add any type of personal touch, even the handwritten thing, it takes a little bit more time as far as your turnaround. It's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, I think so. I think that particularly now that we are distant, just having some physical connection to a thing and particularly to a person can make a big difference. So I'm going to put that in the category of things you could do or should do to enhance your network in 2020 and beyond. I think that's a thing that would work in 1950, 2020, and 2050. It's still going to be something that's relevant and work. What are some things not to do, right? I think there's also some things that technology does, right? It makes things easy to replicate rapidly. But also just these conversations like we're having, it's really convenient for me to initiate a virtual conversation wherever I'm at. So I could be sitting in my bedroom, I could be in the car driving and all these things, but that also says quite a lot about you when you're making that moment to talk to someone. And it's kind of like, no, you know what? I couldn't leave the comfort of my bedroom to sit down and say, here I am, I'm going to talk to another professional. Maybe I need to change my hat and become a professional version of me, even for just 5 minutes. What are some things not to do in this space?
In the networking space, I think is the first thing to do is look to have immediate gratification. Networking, it's the idea of building a network. I think sometimes people think that initial connection is the end game. And the end game really is finding out what people do, who they are, what things in common you have, who you may know in common, but not looking to close the deal, so to speak, on what you have and what your need is, which when if you're graduating college, I know that's a really hard thing to do because your immediate goal is that first job.
Right.
Is, man, I need to get the interview. I need to get a job offer. That can come across really poorly. I had the exact experience just the other day on LinkedIn where someone had seen what my profile is, seen my background, set up a call with me on my calendar. We have the call, and within a few minutes, they're asking me to try and place them for a job with any client that I have in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
I have no background on this person. I don't know them from, they could have been in anywhere, but they're asking for something major from me already. So I think as important as the things to do are, what not to do, the number one thing not to do is have an immediate ask of somebody. You can ask for their time, you can ask for their advice, but if you're asking for something where it's an interview or a job or anything like that, you need to build some trust and show why you're of value to them and why you deserve to get that opportunity. Because if you skip all those steps, to me, it was a complete turnoff. It was a waste of my time for that call, unfortunately, because I would have been willing to help them along the way to get to that spot, but it's an immediate turnoff to people when it's so blatantly obvious that you're looking for the what's in it for me immediately.
Sure. Yeah, and you have been a great resource to our students, both at University Park and Penn State Abington as well. And I can recall time when I was in graduate school working with one of my mentors, Don Martin, and he often talked about this. He called it the law of the farm, which is you can't harvest your crops until you've done the prep work, right? You don't get your payoff immediately. So you have to till the soil before you plant the seeds. You have to tend to the seedlings before they become established enough that they're actually going to give you that payoff, as we can call it that. But even just life tends to have kind of this connection back to nature, and I've always thought about things in that mindset where good things tend to take upfront work, and the payoff is something that is delayed. Good.
I think it's really like you said, it's the long game. It's not the immediate. You're not reaping what you sowed that day. Yeah.
So thinking about that, this long game, other things that I think can be invested in is that this is a skill. It takes practice. You're going to need to develop this. And we talked about this just before we started this recording, is that there's a lot of things that come along with the Penn State logo. You're involved in some things up with SMEAL and different programs all across the Penn State network. And I've kind of categorized this as the Penn State logo comes with a great built-in resource for networking. You still have to put in the time and energy to make those gears work. But I wanted to talk about some of the things that this Penn State logo brings along with it that I encourage everyone within this Penn State network to take advantage of. Are there some things that there's definitely things that you've already been doing, but do you want to talk about some of the things that maybe we see, or even some of the things that we start identifying sometimes too late for our own good to say, wow, I wish I knew about that a year ago. What are some things connected to Penn State that can be utilized as networking opportunities for students?
I think a major one, I'm not sure, it's always a small percentage of students I see there. Twice a year, SMEAL has their SMEAL Impact Day. They have one in the fall, they have one in the spring. You have people that obviously are interested in helping the school because you have people coming in from everywhere. It's an overnight thing where it's a Thursday and Friday. Most everyone has to stay somewhere overnight. So we're investing our money, we're investing our time 2 days. And we're kind of a caged group for 2 days in the SMEAL building. And it's all people that want to help the students because we're coming back to share experiences, to sit in on these panels. It's such an easy way to network because we have nowhere to go. We sit in one area, there's food brought to us, and none of us, personally, I don't want to talk to anybody while I'm there about business. I just want to just sit with the guy next to me, find out who they are, and kind of go from there. But again, it's an easy way to get yourself in front of people. Another really good networking thing, which you might not think of networking, is the mentoring program that Penn State has. Again, it's something I've been involved with for, I think, 3 years now. But What you get out of the mentoring program is you're getting a relationship with your mentor for a year or two, depending on when you start. But that is also building your network because your mentor has their network already built. And for me, one of my first students was involved in fashion. I've got no connections to fashion, I thought. And I thought she was a rock star. Passed her resume to a friend of mine that was just in recruiting. And he passed it on to his college roommate, who I was friends with that I forgot, that started a clothing line, who then interviewed her and got her a job. So it's little things like that that you're not quite aware of. I know LinkedIn has a bunch of training that's offered for free, which I think is like $90 a month for the average person.
So
I think would be awesome to use.
Yeah. So, this is something that I find that I bring up to a lot of students. I even embed LinkedIn Learning into my courses that I teach at Penn State Abington. And I can say far too often, I hear feedback from the students say, wow, I didn't know this was available, and I wish I knew this was available sooner. So one of the things that you have as a Penn State student, you can see the logo up there in the top right. If you have a psu.edu and student account, you can actually connect that to LinkedIn and take advantage of LinkedIn Learning. There's courses in all kinds of things: how to learn software, how to learn things like soft skills, like networking. So I just typed in the search bar today, professional networking, and there's courses all across the board. They are video embedded courses that you can watch. There's downloadable resources. And again, I'm not saying that this is going to be the thing that turns your network into a job offer machine and gets you job offers immediately. But these are some of those things that when, Michael, you were talking about this being part of the long game, these are some things that are really low barrier to entry. Again, the payoff is not going to be necessarily massive, but I think it's part of the process of beginning to develop yourself so that you're capable and able to now not only ask for value from the network that you are trying to be a part of, but you're also adding value to that network. So I think this is something, again, that I'm going to encourage any student to take advantage of this material. It's built into your Penn State experience, and I think this is an opportunity. And like you said, Michael, this has a real cost. And while you have access to it, take advantage of it. So with all this stuff that's available, again, we've got events and activities that are happening all across the Penn State network. We have things as simple as joining a club, which I think is a good pathway to begin building your network. You might not be in a club with a person that has a job ready for you tomorrow, but guest speakers come in. There's all kinds of things, including career and development centers and all this stuff. So what are some things? How do you get this started? Like, without having to be a networking professional, you're going to have to start at step one no matter what. So how do you get the ball rolling?
So I think people don't realize their friends are their first network. And something we did and my group of friends did when we were younger is pre-COVID, obviously, we set up these nights where we basically meet at a bar or restaurant. And just say there's a group of 10 of us, we were required, the goal was each of us had to bring one friend, not from our group, to this bar or restaurant to hang out. And it was super casual and just basically to meet people. It was really not about business talk, because I think a lot of what people think about networking is, it's, hi, I'm Mike Wojcik Communications, this is what I do. And the real valuable networking has nothing to do with that. It's hanging out with somebody for half hour, finding out just who they are, if you even would want to work with that person. And then, down the road, reaching out again about the business side of it. But what we did is we started simply with that. We started up with just kind of a casual get together. And it went from, first meeting was, our group of 10 plus, the 10 others, 20, eventually became like 40 to 50. And, from that relationship, it basically blossomed to one of my largest clients, that somebody I met there got me an intro to an IT director, which was all I needed to get in. There's no way I was going to get in otherwise. But again, that process from that meeting at a restaurant to going to getting in front of that person and closing the deal took 10 years.
Right.
But it's that relationship that person, we talked nothing about business. We just We met there. We went out to lunch a few times. It's doing it that way. And I understand it's really tough to meet at a bar or restaurant right now, but you can do the exact same thing by Zoom. You can, just like we were talking earlier, just a one-off conversation of, hey, my friend Matt, I'm friends with Matt. He's in a similar boat as you, where I think you guys might be able to work with each other in a different industry. Hey, how about you hop on a quick call? Yep. And it's setting up that warm introduction to somebody else. But it starts with your network of friends. And then you can bring it in, because there's different versions of networking depending on how old you are. And for my age and the age younger than me, I think that's what people want, is the relationship, not as much. They need they want the transactional end game, but they don't want a strictly transactional approach of, hi, I'm this person, you're this person. How do we make money for each other? It's gaining that relationship and building it.
Yeah. So, one of the things I've been seeing, and I think that your story brings open the opportunity for many students to interpret that now into a virtual world. So how would you do some of this now? And I've been seeing some things. I have several students that are starting to create small groups where they meet on Zoom and they play Among Us, which is kind of an online game, up to about 10 people. But that would be a great opportunity to say, you know what, if 4 people each bring one additional person from outside of that group, now you have a new cohort that has branches that reach out to an additional 4 people and an additional 4 people. And while it's casual, it still has the ability for people to engage with each other, have some of that conversation, but also learn a little bit about who are these new people to our group that we're making connections with. And I think that's, again, back to, while things have changed, they've only really changed in format. They haven't changed in the actual practice. The actual function still remains the same, which is to make personal connections, invest in building trust and knowledge of other people, and continue to build and maintain those relationships for a long time. Because as we know, these things are, they emerge. Opportunity emerges when we don't expect it, but it also has very similar strings, so that you never really get too far away from those that you've worked with. Just yesterday, I was talking with my marketing professor from when I was an undergraduate student, which was at least 20 years ago. So I had to deliver something up to him, and the point is, we're still talking about what else can we do? What's next? And those things are the reasons why you keep relationships. So we talked a little bit about how you start some of these relationships, and how important it is to make those connections. Let's say you do have a relationship that maybe you've had for years, 5 years. Now that we're in more of a virtual mode, how do you maybe maintain some of these relationships? What are some things you might want to do to maybe check back in with people that have been in your network, give them some updates? What are some things that matter to you? Let's say if you've been working with a student for maybe 2 years, how would you like to maybe hear from them? What are some things that would keep that relationship maintained?
I think what you said, the beginning part, that keeping things casual, once you have a network in place, I think that kind of carries on to this. Over the students I work with, I get texts from them all the time, and vice versa, because I know sometimes, for me, I'll be doing something and randomly think about one of the students I'm working with and shoot them a text. And I know, their mentor is not always the top of their mind. So I think the casual spot, you've already built that relationship. If it's an actual person that you consider in your network, it should be casual, because you want to, the professional side, nobody really wants to always talk work. And it's a simple check-in. And even like you said, maybe not creating that mass email that you send out to 1,000 people. You can honestly do that with a text, though. Mm-hmm. All your points of contact. I do it with my buddies that I haven't talked to in a while, and I'll just send 15, 20 texts of the exact same thing to check in with each one of them, just because I haven't talked to them in a few months. And you get your responses when you get them, but you can do those different touch points. And if they're actually in your network, that opens up a world of possibilities. You can text them, you can call them and email them, because you expect them to reciprocate and respond to you, because that's when you know they're in your network, when you get responses, not if you're hounding them to get the calls. That's not in your network. That's your pipe dream of having them in your network. But once there's a connection, same with VP. When I call or text or email you, I know I'm going to get a response. I'm not worried about having to follow up with you 5 days later because you're in my network. So it's just a matter of the touch points. It doesn't have to be anything super professional, just that touch.
Yeah. I totally agree. And, to me, this is where the concept of networking, there's an actual active practice of having the conversations, responding to an email, responding to a LinkedIn connection request. Those are kind of the active words of networking. But then there's, I think, the strategy of networking, which I think often gets overshadowed by the actual function of networking, which was, okay, I'm going to, get dressed, put on a tie and get, look professional, go to an event, and I've got to worry about how do I hold my cup and my food at the same time. Like there's so much attention paid to the practice of networking. But I often feel that the strategy of networking, kind of like we're talking about here, where there's not only getting relationships, it's not a game. We're not collecting cards, sports cards, Pokemon cards. We're not collecting things. We are developing relationships, which require both initiation of that relationship, but also maintenance of that relationship. So are there some other strategic kind of level things that at least from what I've seen, don't get as much attention as the active, the moment in the moment networking stuff? Are there things that you can do outside of interacting with people that you should be planning about, maybe researching industries and identifying what are industries that I might really excel in? Are there other strategic kinds of suggestions you might have for people?
Sure. As the students are getting into the real world, so to speak, and getting into their jobs, look at who your connections are. Look at where they're at. And if it's an industry you want, look at the connections they have connected, just say on LinkedIn. And then the famous follow-up question is this a connection or is this an actual person to see if it qualifies as something that you can work with. And I think, again, going back to the Penn State thing, it says it on LinkedIn, who is a Penn State alumni.
Right.
And I've done a ton of business just by something simple. I mean, you can do so much different things. I know when you're coming out of school, you were dead broke. And trust me, I've been there. But you can do a bunch of little things very inexpensively. If it's somebody you really want to make a connection with, send them the handwritten note. Get some little tiny Penn State thing, put it in a small little envelope or box. Say, hey, saw you were from Penn State. I just recently graduated. I'd love to connect, and send it to them. And it's amazing the little things that cost very little payoff, so huge. So it's just a matter of how. Right now, technology is awesome. Like technology to me is the best thing. I can work from wherever. I can multitask a billion things. I could be on a beach in a tent, feeding my kids a snack, and be on a conference call. No one knows anything. The downside is there's no way to differentiate yourself until you have that initial relationship. So doing the little things of whether it's a handwritten note or something that's taking the time to make yourself a person and sending it to them, that differentiates so huge. So I think as much as technology is amazing, you can build your network by showing why you're different and worth somebody's time, by doing those little things to be more than just an invite. But I would reach out to my friends. But again, I think it's super important to try and figure out a way that makes you stand out.
Okay, good. So we're talking about generations. So I'm hoping we're talking to quite a number of current students, which are mostly iGen or Gen Z or whatever we're deciding to call that, which is mostly people under the age of 24. Millennials are now 24 to 42, I think. Generation X is somewhere. Yeah. And I'm Gen X, so that's why there's nothing left up here, all those things. But it's, but there's different generations, and we've all been impacted by different technological advances, cultural changes, social changes, economic circumstances. So as probably, I'm certain as if there's a young person out there, obviously their parents and some of their influencers are going to be from a different generation. What are some things that maybe have stayed the same across the time span, and maybe some things that have been a bit different that maybe there needs to be a little bit of a generational adjustment so that we can understand that some things that might have worked in 2000 might not necessarily be as appropriate in 2020.
With what's different generationally. So the idea of networking to somebody above, just say 40, let's say 45, 50 and above. Yeah, no worries. Help you out. So let's say above 50, and people, younger than that. When I first got started out of college, me and a friend of mine, he had also started a company, and we'd go to these Chamber of Commerce events. We're 23 years old. It would be me and him hanging out together, eating food, because no one would talk to us. It was, again, nothing against the industries, but nothing but bankers and real estate agents. Not targets for really either of us. Everybody would do the handshake and look, where they shake your hand and look directly at your chest to see what your name is and what you do. And they spit on their heel and walk away. And a lot of the older generation, that's how they network. They think that going to a chamber event or a chamber luncheon for a couple hours and standing up and saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so from X company. You should do business with me," like giving a quick 30-second spiel and expect to network that way. And I think for the younger group, like my group and younger, there's no way I'm going to do business like that. I don't belong to any chambers of commerce. I've gone to the do-it-yourself method of reaching out to my network and pulling and creating the environment where we can all come together and meet random people. And I think what you said previously about being casual, you'd go to those events, and you're right. You'd have your food, you'd have your drink. How do I shake somebody's hand? You're wearing a shirt and tie, maybe a suit, which odds are there's no chance you're wearing a shirt and tie and suit, or maybe a shirt and tie, but not a suit. Like you're just not. And you see, and I find it hysterical because you'll find people that are like in their young 20s wearing a suit, looking super uncomfortable, going, you're not wearing a suit to your job.
Yeah.
So the idea of networking should be casual. It should be that relationship. And the older generation, it's that shirt, tie, one hand with a drink, other hand with your food, looking for your business card to collect them and move on so they can call you a day later to try and get your meeting. The younger generation, I really feel it's more about creating a connection, and that you're going to set up these events or go to these events with the idea just to talk to people. And maybe you'll get their business card, but the idea is to create a situation where you see them again, whether you go to that type of networking event again so you can talk to them, or you go and create your own situation where you try and meet for lunch, or you try and meet for coffee, or a Zoom meeting, that you get the personal side. So I think it's really just a difference by an age group of the super professional look of what is expected and complete transactional versus the relationship building of a younger generation. And I think you're going to see more and more of the more casual type setups going forward. And I think the Chamber of Commerce isn't going to be as important because they're not providing the value that networking in the older days provided. It just isn't the same.
Yeah, and one of the things that I also would like to add to that is that networking is an active function, and technology has, I'm going to say, kind of a lure to it, where it kind of glimmers and it gets you kind of chasing things like building a LinkedIn profile, building up this content. But the point is that LinkedIn page is part of your networking resources, but it's a passive resource. You still need to be active and drive people to engage with your LinkedIn account, drive people to engage with a website. If you have a personal website, which again, something I recommend think about. Again, as a Penn State student, we all have access to the Google suite of resources, and one of those things is you can build Google Sites. So you can start building a personal brand and have a web page and have your LinkedIn page. All right, so we're just about out of time with Michael. So what we're going to do is just get ready to move on and have some next steps from here. Again, we encourage you to engage with the resources at Penn State University if you're a Penn State student. Engage with the people that are part of your Penn State network. So we have an immense alumni network, one of the greatest in the nation. And we have great people like Michael Wojcik that not only are part of the Penn State network, but they're also willing to engage and develop further members of their network from the Penn State community. So we, again, invite you to engage with all the Global Entrepreneurship Week activities going on throughout the rest of the week. We invite you to engage with all the other events, activities, and resources made available through the Penn State Network. But most importantly, what I encourage you to do is to look for people like Michael Wojcik and others, and Michael Wojcik is right there. You guys need to be thinking about, how else can I leverage my time at Penn State beyond getting the credits I need to complete my degree, because there is a wealth of opportunity that will not only pay off in 2020, but beyond. So Michael, we'll just finish up. Any final thoughts as we wrap for the day?
Now, just take the time to investigate what Penn State has to offer, because I didn't do a good enough job on my end, realizing all of the resources, the amount of access and the amount of people that come in. I completely was blind to it until I graduated and looked back and said, oh my gosh, there's so much I missed. There's so much more I could have pulled out of Penn State that I just didn't know. Good.
Well, again, Michael, I always appreciate the time that we get to spend together. I learn far more than I think I contribute, but I am appreciative, again, to have you as part of my network. I at least consider you to be someone that I value the time and energy, not only that you provide to me, but you've been incredibly generous and supportive to students that we've been able to connect. And my guess is, if they were on the call, they would also say that they've greatly valued the time and energy that you have contributed to support them and their business and entrepreneurial endeavors. So I, again, want to just thank you, and we'll make sure we get you a handwritten letter in the mail and a little Penn State trinket as well, because these are things I need to learn on my end. But again, thank you, Michael, and thanks to everyone that watched the video, whether it was during its premiere on November the 18th or beyond. One of the nice things is this is some evergreen content, so it can exist here for longer. So my last plug is, if you like the content, please like and subscribe to the Abington Launchbox YouTube channel. We're going to have lots more content like this coming over the next few months. And again, we're using this opportunity as a virtual center to find ways to make it much easier for us to connect with people that have great messages to bring. So thanks again to both Michael Wojcik and everyone that joined us today. We appreciate the time and effort. We'll see you soon.